This is Lunchtime Live with Sarah Tucker, exclusively on Dubai Eye 103.8.
Well, a very good afternoon to you, and we are all heading towards the summer break, the Grandes Vacances for all of those of you that speak French, and the children are getting excited, but still lots of work to be done, either for those staying here or thinking about another level of education and different possibilities as well. And today we have Bill O'Brien. He is the president of the American College of Dubai, and we're going to be talking about transfer programs, which are of quite a lot of interest to people if they're already residing in Dubai, or it could be an alternative to a potentially lower cost and more flexible degree. Then we're going to talk about the summer camps. We've been doing that for the last couple of weeks because, of course, quite a few parents are still here and either working or kids. Some children need to catch up on certain events or just for fun. So we're going to be talking to Mathnasium, Luis Tierney, the founder and co-owner of Mathnasium, and Eunice Ferrari. They are going to be talking about their latest endeavour. I think they're based in Al Barsha and Murdiff, but we'll be confirming where you can get involved in those summer workshops. And then the Little Gym summer camp as well. Very much something that quite a few people do within term time, but also if they want to get to the next level or they're looking for a certain badge, then maybe something of interest during the summer as well. And then, of course, a lot of the summer camps are focused towards the younger children, but Salon educators are going to be coming in to talk about their summer camp, which is, we'll have Deborah Whitehead, who's the Director of Education at Salon Educators, and we're going to be talking about, obviously it could be an introduction to a career in hairdressing, and she'll be talking about the different activities that children, maybe slightly older children, can be involved in to learn a skill set during their summer holidays. Also, as always, we like to give you prizes on this show, and again, we have our 4 tickets for the Man of Steel, Superman, at the IMAX Meydan, of course one of the biggest screens in the region, and 562 seats. We're going to reserve 4 of those for you, and today's question is, which newspaper does Clark Kent, aka Superman, report for? So if you can send that in on 4001, then you could be one of the lucky winners of that prize today. We're going to run the competition till 2 o'clock, so just before 2 we will be announcing the winner, but get your text sent in because we will contact you after the program. Also, we have Business Bleak, which is on a massive rollover of 6,000 dirhams. I know you've heard throughout the programs The Voice, but just to remind you, this is the voice that you need to get.
Many companies have had to move up again, and you're seeing that in the Middle East as well.
So you have to scratch your head, you have to think, because this one's getting pretty tough. If you check out DubaiEye1038.com, it'll give you all the rules and regulations for playing, but also, more importantly, some of the guesses that have been incorrect. Then all you need to do is send in Business Bleak, not the name of the person you think it is, to the Tonight Show between 5 and 8 p.m. with Tim and Rich, and they will possibly call you up, and then you get to guess live who that person is. Of course, this prize is courtesy of the Ivy, 6,000 dirhams worth of vouchers to be spent either on one of their wonderful brunches or one of their business lunches. 150 dirhams for a 3-course lunch. We need to do the maths on that one. Maybe I'll set that for my next guest. And, of course, lots of fun to be had there. So send in those Business Bleaks later today. Right, let's get back to the program now, because I have in the studio with me Bill O'Brien, who is the president of American College of Dubai. So thank you very much for joining us today, Bill.
And thank you for having me, and thanks to our listeners for joining us.
I know, and we thought we'd tackle this subject because a lot of people are looking at, they maybe just sat their A-levels or they sat for their IB program. They're obviously clearly making those decisions about where to go to university, or they may be further down year-wise, thinking about which way they can tackle their higher education. Maybe some people won't be so familiar with the U.S. system and how it works. So what is a transfer program?
Well, in terms of putting it in the framework of the U.S. system in general, the American system is unique, and the Canadians parallel it to some degree, in as much as it features 1 to 2 years of what are known as general education subjects that are not in the particular discipline of the major in which the student will ultimately graduate. Thus, the freshman, sophomore, first 2 years include a variety of humanities, social sciences, mathematics, natural sciences, and other introductory type courses, which are all taken prior to going into the main subject of study for the ultimate degree. So the U.S. system is unique, whereas some of our other global systems feature pretty much a very focused approach, wherein as soon as the student goes into university, they're studying one discipline and one discipline only. So the U.S. system has a degree of flexibility. It is 4 years in duration, and students are eligible to matriculate into the system, putting it in kind of a Dubai context, upon completion of O-levels. A-levels, of course, would suffice as well, or the Indian +2 system.
Yes, and it's that degree of flexibility that's interesting for parents and for students alike, because, you know, we were chatting earlier, weren't we, and I say, you know, sometimes I think it's really tough for people being asked to make some fairly big decisions, what is really pretty early on in their life, and with this process, they can maybe pick a course or they can start here, and if they decide that some subjects aren't quite right for them, there's this ability to either transfer to a different course or transfer location as well if they're looking for a cultural experience.
Very, very true. And the American system, it features, for lack of a better expression, a second chance option, which is not always the case with all systems. Thus, students that are young and at various degrees of maturity, particularly those that have just come out of the O-levels, are able to get exposure to the university level of studies. They're able to experiment to some degree, and as you point out, kind of delay that decision as to which approach or which major they're ultimately going to take. So it's, and particularly when we put it in the framework of costs, from a family perspective, they're able to have that student mature, earn some credits, and ultimately lower the cost of the ultimate education in the U.S. or Canada.
And how popular is the program? Because obviously you're running it in the American College of Dubai. Mm-hmm. What kind of uptake do you have?
Well, we've been here since 1991. And in that period of time to today, we've transferred some 3,000 students. Of course, it's over a pretty broad period of time. Normally, we transfer north of 100 students per year, U.S. and Canada being the most popular destination. Some transfer to other of the 4-year programs that exist here in UAE as well. But we have a very steady intake each year of students who have recognized, based on our just duration of being here, that it is an alternative path where they can save some money and, as we pointed out, get the maturity and earn those credits prior to transferring.
And what's the kind of makeup of people that want to transfer? Because initially you might think, it's expats here and maybe American or Canadian parents that want their children to go to a system that they're familiar with, and indeed their children want to go to too. Is it a real mix now? Has that changed over the years?
Well, from our perspective, we really don't service much in the way of North American families, just due to the fact that they tend to send their children back immediately upon graduating high school, because they also have the option of availing of community colleges in America, which for many of them works better. Our student body is primarily, looks like Dubai. It's a mix of Pan-Arab, South Asian, increasingly other nationalities, as Dubai continues to be really a very diverse cosmopolitan type of city. So I would say that the bulk of our student flow are really, again, Dubai's demographic.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll come back and talk about costs and what you think the students actually gain from that in just a short while. If you're trying to make the decision to transfer or not, or if you think that could be an attractive part of a program that you'd like to be interested in, send in your thoughts on 4001.
From touchpads to mobiles, cameras to curling irons. If it runs on a spark, we're reviewing it. It's Tech Talk on Nightline, every Tuesday from 9 p.m.
Gotta get myself in the zone here. Hold on. Eyes are closing. Okay, here we go. Now, this is Cookie Monster. And the cookie starts with C. But also, Magnus is cool as a cookie. So he starts with C, and he brings us Tech Talk because he's cool as a cookie. This is Nightline. What do you think? Adorable. You're cool as a cookie.
That's Tech Talk on Nightline with Dr. James Pikeway, Tuesday from 9 p.m., only on Dubai Eye 103.8.
Welcome to the world of Al Ansari Exchange,
A world of simplified financial services under one roof. Service that meets the highest of your expectations and most of all, provides you with the best foreign exchange and worldwide money transfer services in over 120 conveniently located branches across the UAE, along with a host of unique ancillary services such as credit cards and bill payments and many more. For information, just call 600-546-6000 or visit alansariexchange.com. Al Ansari Exchange, your first choice. Climate change is a reality now and has become one of the greatest environmental threats. Global warming, rising sea levels and floods are some of its ill effects. We can address this challenge by powering sustainable growth. PTL Solar can assist you mitigate climate change through solar-powered installations. Whether for home or your business, log on to ptlsolar.com or call 050-1055-600 for more details. PTL Solar, powering sustainable growth. Watch the Legends live from July 2nd to the 6th. Dubai Indoor Football Championship Team Profile. AS Roma have been Serie A champions on 3 occasions, most recently in...
If you want to know what they are, and indeed if you can become involved in them, and indeed what they offer to students, both financially and on a cultural basis, then please send in your text on 4001. And Bill, we were talking there very much about the benefits because and costs of the program. I think it's very important for parents and college graduates these days to take into account costs, particularly further afield. It can actually be a benefit for the transfer program. It can actually make the college education a little cheaper.
Yes, and for some families, it can make the difference between being able to get that North American education and not. We look at right now in some of the mid to upper tier universities in the U.S. where full-on per year costs can be $40,000, sometimes north of that. And by utilizing a transfer concept, families can hopefully get 30 to 40% of that returned to them, i.e. reduced.
And is there a cost, clearly that they're going abroad, is there kind of some sort of administration cost or something up front that maybe parents need to be aware of before they start considering a transfer program?
Not particularly. The admissions process to the institutions in North America or U.S. are really the same for a transfer student or just a newly matriculating student. And in those cases, the fees are usually nominal in terms of an admission fee.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of what students get from it, because actually you said you can transfer within the UAE as well. So if you fancy, maybe either you think you prefer a different course or just a different experience, that's possible to also within the region transfer.
That's true, and it also, from our perspective as we counsel families, it's important to also have a plan B in terms of if the family's oriented towards having the student go to the U.S. or Canada. Sometimes situations change, or for whatever reason they're unable to make that transition. It's very important not to be in a program that doesn't have an appropriate end state. And the good news is with some of the new institutions in the UAE, there's always that alternative if they begin a transfer program, say with us, and then don't have the option to go to North America.
Yes, and it is an interesting one. I was just sharing with you before, I worked for a very prestigious educational institute in Switzerland, and a lot of students and parents will spend a lot of money to get to the interviews, which are pretty rigorous, and then of course fall at the last fence because there was a visa issue, because they came from a different part of the world, or, versus Europe. There's so many inter-regional plays there. That's quite difficult for some students, isn't it?
It is, and any counselor, including those with our team, should always make sure they're very clear to families up front as to the two factors. One, the fact that no one, except for a government official, can speak on behalf of the U.S. or the Canadian government in terms of who will issue a visa. That is strictly their decision, and they obviously make it at the time of application. The criteria, the second part, the criteria is fairly well known, and it revolves around, is the student a legitimate one, and that's based on age, grades, etc. Does the family have the financial resources? And currently, particularly in the U.S., does the student have ties to their home country to which they'd return? Again, these are subjective in to some degree, but that's, again, cycling back to my earlier point, why it is important to have that alternative plan should the ultimate transfer not be able to be executed.
Yeah, and what happens, because you said you've been doing this for a long time, you kind of had 3,000 students more or less go through the program. In, sitting on top of it all as a president, what have you seen sort of students gain? Have you come back to the UAE and you've seen a really change in terms of their outlook?
Oh, definitely. And it also gets to another point we talked about earlier, and that is they really do come back with a much broader sense of point of departure. Not to in any way belittle the experience that people get here, because it's outstanding in terms of diversity. It's a major business center. The fact is, for a lot of students who grew up here, getting off to bigger institutions or just different environment in the U.S. or Canada really does broaden, and it makes them ultimately, which is what we look for, ultimately more competitive.
Yes, and I mean you can say that about any country, to be honest. You know, we're all supposedly becoming more international, and indeed, workplace is demanding that. And you're preparing, as you said many times in this program, for careers, locations that our parents wouldn't have even dreamt of that were possible. So do you find that a really big challenge at the moment? You know, trying to prepare your students for the unknown.
Oh, definitely, particularly those that have had, let's just say, a lot of the students here in Dubai have had very strong parenting, which is a good thing. But in terms of all of a sudden they're about to make a leap into an unknown situation, and one for which they're going to have to take a lot of their own responsibility. The good news is, of course, through a transfer program, they've matured somewhat before they go and make that. But we spend a lot of time trying to make sure that our students understand what they'll face at the next stage of their educational path.
Yes, and as you say, it's a nice option sometimes, and also it can be a financial option that they can start off close to home when they're finding their feet, because it is studying in a different way. It is more independent. Plus, parents who want to keep an eye on them when they're just letting them fly the nest. It's quite a nice option that can happen too.
Very, very true. And also, we have to face the fact not all students succeed in post-secondary education, and sadly, if it's not going to work out, or if maybe the student is more vocationally oriented, it's better to find that out in a more, lower cost and more family kind of oriented setting than to have a $40,000 mistake where the student, and we've seen that, and all of us have, where students come back unsuccessful from a university of Canada, the United States. Maybe they would have succeeded if they'd been able to mature some more, ease into the system instead of going into a class of 1,000 in an economics class at Ohio State University, not to besmirch Ohio State.
Yeah, no, but you're right, because I remember when I was in university, the second year was the real breaking point, because they ratcheted up the exams. People were not sure necessarily about the subjects. It kind of not even so much cruised along. It's just that the subjects were many and varied, so they weren't being forced to focus. And then when they were, they thought, I'm not sure I really love this subject to be putting this much work in. And as you said, it gets expensive and disappointing. At least they can transfer those credits in the U.S. system.
Yes, and the U.S. system and the Canadian, very much, it's a routine part of the normal ebb and flow of higher education. I know it's a bit unique in terms of other systems don't necessarily have it, and quite frankly, once you make a decision at a fairly young age in certain systems, there is that degree of flexibility, and as we pointed out earlier, the degree to make an adjustment. And at 19 or 18 years old, very few people know exactly where they're going to be at age 40 or 50, so it's good to have that, I think.
I know, and even as we get into more maturing years, we still like to think about different options, and that is actually going to be the landscape, isn't it? I forget the statistics, and Brandy and Malcolm were talking about them the other day, but we will change jobs at least about 14 times in our lifetime now.
Jobs and careers, not just a different firm, but in many cases a very significant redirection.
Yeah, exactly. I know. As you say, I was in banking and then became a financial journalist, and then here we are talking about education, having worked in an education institute as well. So I'm very familiar, and also very protective of the young people having to be forced to make decisions, and also that there's a lot of pressure that if you don't get it right now, then you're not set up for the rest of your life. There's many ways to study and many ways to evolve going forward. I think you found that with some of your students as well.
Yes, we have, and it leads into a kind of a secondary point, but there also tends to be a focus from a lot of the families here that as soon as the student finishes undergraduate, they should go right into the graduate course of study. And with you're familiar as well from the UK, that's not always the recommended approach. It's always good to get some time in between to determine exactly what they want to get and what kind of credentials they ultimately want to achieve. So I think the buzzword as we look through it is flexibility and the ability to make changes as required, and that's where the transfer programs and the degree of flexibility that comes with them, I think, is important.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge on the program and indeed what it means for different students. Today we were talking to Bill O'Brien, President of the American College of Dubai.
Thank you.
And coming up next, we are going to be talking about all the different kind of more educational, I suppose, summer camps in terms of if people maybe want to move on a level in maths or just like a hobby such as gymnastics where they really fancy a bit of extra attention, or parents are working and they need to find an option to help them through the summer. Then we're going to be talking to Mathnasium just after 12:30, and then in the second hour the Little Gym summer camp will be featured, and after 1:30 Salon Educators, where they'll be talking to Deborah Whitehead, the director there, about summer hairdressing camp, which